Yasis. Hello, Yasis. Hello, this is my first time to Athens. My name is Benjamin Horner. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I'm very excited about the Cannabis Expo here in Athens. So far it's been fantastic. A lot of great vendors. I came here as a guest of the Lesvos Plant Library of Medicine. There's a base in Lesvos, Jerry Poynton, if you haven't seen his booth. Lesvos Plant Library of Medicine has been doing some work in Michigan on medically infused cannabis chocolates. The chocolates are, special dark chocolate that comes from Ecuador, and it's infused with full spectrum cannabis, so it has THC in it, and CBDs and the other cannabinoids that are very important. I met Jerry through a mutual friend, John Sinclair, who has been a cannabis advocate and activist since the 70s. He did some jail time for marijuana and led the resistance against the establishment to legalize marijuana. And in Michigan, in November, thankfully, we passed recreational marijuana, tax and regulate like alcohol. Taxes will be used for schools and roads, and it's only available for adults over the age of 21. In Michigan, we passed, and we'll talk about it a little bit in our presentation, medical marijuana in 2008. I got involved in the medical marijuana industry in 2010. And I'm going to talk about some of the projects that I've been involved in. I opened up a dispensary, the first dispensary in Flint, Michigan in 2010. And we've been operating there for 8 years. And it was a big surprise. It was totally different in the beginning. People were very nervous, very scared. In some communities, medical marijuana was fully accepted. In other communities, it was rejected, and people went to jail. But we found that, with treating people with medical marijuana, not just CBDs, but the full spectrum of marijuana, we were able to make a very positive impact in people's lives. There is some good science about cannabis as a medicine and many of the different cannabinoids, including CBDs and CBGs and CBNs, but THC is extremely important. First discovered in Israel. I saw some folks that visited our booth from Israel. They're very excited about the medical marijuana, and hopefully soon they'll be able to export cannabis from Israel. So for 8 years in a retail location, I sold marijuana to adults and children that had a medical marijuana card that was issued by the state of Michigan. Each state in the United States now governs its own marijuana laws, although it's federally illegal. It's legalized within each individual state. Each state has its own sovereignty, its own ability to write some of its own laws. And often in the United States, there's an argument between the state laws and the federal laws. Well, in many states, we've decided to not listen to the federal government and enact our own laws. They start locally. Started in California, for AIDS and cancer patients. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, in a very anecdotal way, after treating thousands of people in Michigan, that it does work, and it does so in miraculous ways. And I've seen some great use of CBD and CBGs, but only with full spectrum, with THC, high THC content, do you really see the miracle of marijuana as a plant, cannabis as a plant, to be able to treat things like cancer and MS and other debilitating diseases. So I'm going to show you this little video, and it can better describe what's going on here in Michigan and in parts of the United States, and hopefully will be happening here in Athens. And then I'll talk, and then we can do some questions. Okay?
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale.
Barack Obama said this week that he's tried drugs.
Which of you are ready to admit to having used marijuana in the past?
Admit, pass 377, because it's illegal.
The Attorney General says he believes there are too many loopholes in Michigan's Medical Marijuana Act.
My doors are going to be open. If you shut my doors, I will find a way to open them again.
13 states allow some use of doctor-prescribed marijuana.
This law is the word of the people. Let it be.
The aftermath of the search, they just destroyed the whole place.
This is a war on people. This is a war on Americans.
Good marijuana consumers, we want to have their share.
This half hour, we're talking about the big business of marijuana. The DEA spent $10 billion last year.
For the purpose of this documentary, we have brought together the leaders of the Michigan medical marijuana movement. Many feel that there are some very uncompassionate lawmakers in Lansing that will do whatever it takes to complicate things for state-licensed patients and caregivers. For a better understanding of where we're at, let's take a look at the history of the Michigan medical marijuana.
Well, the prohibition of cannabis in the United States was brought about by fraud on the Congress. If the United States Congress had realized that cannabis or marijuana was hemp, they never would have made it illegal.
2007, referendum ballot initiatives in Detroit, Ann Arbor, Flint, and Ferndale made code amendments to their city charter that allowed for medical marijuana.
I began the process of getting a ballot initiative in the city of Detroit to legalize the medical use of marijuana under Detroit city law. And I finally succeeded in doing that. In 2004, we won with 60% of the vote. And that created a movement in Michigan where it emboldened a lot of patients and a lot of people that want marijuana to be treated a little different than it is. And so we got ballot initiatives in Flint, Traverse City, Ferndale, and Ann Arbor. And they all passed. All local laws were changed. We did have some opposition. Bill Schuette, the current Attorney General, as a matter of fact, led the opposition when he was a judge. Yeah, they fought back. The Michigan Hospital Association was one of their biggest donors, and the DeVos family from Amway.
The Michigan Medical Marijuana Act was drafted by the Marijuana Policy Project, which is funded by Progressive Insurance, owned by Peter Lewis. And they put $1 million or so into the petition drive.
2008, voters approved the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that allows doctors to refer patients to the program and allows patients to possess up to 12 plants and up to 2.5 ounces.
Well, the department at first came out with really crazy rules, or proposed rules anyway. One of them, you had to have the marijuana in a locked safe. You had to turn in all overages to the state police for destruction. You had regular inspections, of all facilities by the Department of Community Health and by police and everything like that. And I say the community really fought that one hard. And at that point, the Department of Community Health, the powers that be met, and they decided, hey, we're just going to go with the spirit of the law. We're not going to have any of these unusual regulations. We're simply going to be an administrative agency that produces ID cards and follows the law, in a very narrow way. But they did have a lot of really strange rules that were proposed initially, but we convinced them to do the right thing.
2009, Michiganders begin to acquire their medical marijuana licenses by the thousands, causing a massive backup at the Michigan Department of Community Health. The first compassion clubs and dispensaries are open.
People saw an opportunity to be able to do something outside of work in a plant, and there are even, if you can even call it that, there aren't even any jobs in plants anymore. There isn't anything practically in this state. And this has been a godsend, to this economy. And that's how I see the whole thing coming about. And I think Schuette and those people are trying to make their move early to kill it off before it expands even further, before it gets more deeply entrenched within the culture, and it would be almost impossible to eliminate. So he wants to put it on a fast track, to get rid of it.
2010, Republicans reacquire majority control of the Michigan government. Bill Schuette, an opponent of medical marijuana, is elected as the Attorney General. Medical marijuana dispensaries begin to explode throughout Michigan. Most open and operate without problems. In Oakland County, the district attorney, Jessica Cooper, pulls the trigger on raids of 2 dispensaries that are supposed to act as test cases.
Michael Bouchard and Jessica Cooper, prosecutor of Oakland County, believes that the law really doesn't say what it says. And they say that anything unless you're getting your medicine from a caregiver, anything else is illegal. That is their theory, and ultimately that's going to be proven out in court. I mean, there are court challenges heading all the way. They will be going to the Supreme Court. But Mike Bouchard is making a preemptive strike, let's put it that way, to get a decision as soon as possible, which he hopes will be favorable.
Lawmakers are still in a paradigm shift. They would still like things to be the way that they were in 2007. There's a financial motive, and then there's a moral motive. On a moral level, the lawmakers are trying to retain a sense of illegality for marijuana that they've been trained to have for the last 30 years.
2011. By February, the number of registered patients passes the 100,000 mark. Several bills are introduced that challenge the Medical Marijuana Act regarding such things as patient-doctor relationship and patient-to-patient transfers. These bills greatly restrict access to the Michigan medical marijuana program.
Starting in 1775, Thomas Jefferson was the first person to put an initiative, and he did it in Virginia. And so, if Thomas Jefferson says that the people should have the right to enact law, then government should have to honor that law. And so we take that very, very seriously, that the government should, at first they should implement this law, and then they should honor it, and then if they want to tweak the law later on, come back and talk to us.
There are now over 100,000 patients and caregivers participating in the Michigan medical marijuana program.
There is a need, for medical marijuana. There's a lot of people, it's not just cancer or Lou Gehrig's disease and so on, but people with chronic pain conditions. Sometimes they do need medical marijuana. Now again, I'm not bashing Merck or Pfizer or anything like that. Those are good companies and those drugs work for some people. For other people, they don't work for them. And medical marijuana has been a godsend.
Living with multiple sclerosis is very terrible. I would say about 3 weeks ago, I just finished up a 9-week stint in the hospital, and back in June when I woke up, I couldn't see, I couldn't use my legs.
I have a form of muscular dystrophy, I have fibromyalgia, and I also have, which they do believe, arthritis in my back.
Last year I was hit by a car and broke my back in 4 places, and I have a steel plate and everything now.
The name for it is multiple sclerosis, and it's gotten to the point where I can't do too much with my body, and there's a lot of spasming going on. So I have 6 different medicines that I need to take during the day. So I've got my little medicine pills all set up, and they all do different things, but they all give about the same problems.
Now, what kind of things have I seen in patients before in applying cannabis to their medical situations? I deal with patients with MS, Crohn's, UC, colitis, IBS, MS, cancer, various forms of cancer, skin conditions, terrible eczemas that haven't gone away for years, HIV patients, just almost everything that is a major scourge to the medical profession these days is something that, for one reason or another, it seems that cannabis is able to actually address these situations, these medical situations that the doctors are having such a hard time with.
Well, when my accident first happened, I was on morphine and then Vicodin after that, and had an allergic reaction. Made me throw up and itching everywhere. My whole face felt like it was just crawling the whole time, and with medical marijuana, I don't have any of those problems.
Definitely the side effects were not good. The narcotics make me really drowsy, where I can't play and interact with my kids. Also, I just can't function right in pain. to where I'd break down and just cry all the time.
But if you do marijuana, it doesn't give you that problem. It doesn't upset your stomach. It doesn't make you constipated. It relaxes you and you feel a lot better.
Currently at this time, through cannabis and Simpson oil, I am not taking any medications.
My wife was losing massive amounts of weight and the doctors had no answers for her. So we entered the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program and she is much better now. My pain is under control. I've dropped the anti-seizure medicines, which I was on massive dosages. I've all but eradicated any pain medications, and I'm a lot healthier today than I was.
We need the medical community to speak out in support of this. I have a client who was able to reduce his OxyContin intake from 8 per day to 6 per day, which is huge, both in the how it affects his body physically and in the savings in the expense of those drugs.
Since I've been using medical marijuana, it has changed entirely my attitude, my life, and my personal well-being, because now I'm not addicted to these other drugs anymore. I get the same relief without the side effects.
The numbers are about 4% of the population does suffer from some kind of chronic pain condition, and we've got close to 100,000 people, in the state of Michigan that now use medical marijuana that are authorized to do so. And some people like Bill Schuette make a big deal out of that. Well, that's less than 1% of the population, because we got 10 million population in Michigan, so about 1%. And apparently this is, it's a godsend for people.
That it is a very sacred plant, because I believe in Christianity and therefore I believe in a God. And I believe in God who created this plant for man's use. And he even earmarked it by saying, and this is an exceptionally good plant for you.
This whole thing is not about medical marijuana, people just getting high, it's relief. I figure this, people have the right to go out, they have a right to drink as much as they want, and it causes cirrhosis of the liver. We all know what alcoholism causes. We all know people have the right to go out and smoke a cigarette. We all know it causes cancer. Should I not have the own right to choose what I want to put into my body? I mean, I should have the right to either want to take this OxyContin over here, which is going to clog me up, cause me side effects that I'm not sure of, and some mental things to go along with it, to whereas I can smoke a joint or I can eat a piece of candy and have as much as relief and no side effects. And again, it's my choice. I don't understand what the problem is.
With mounting opposition to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program, many have concerns about the challenges facing patients and caregivers.
Well, the biggest challenge is coming up this fall, and if we don't stop them this fall, there's a very good chance we'll lose everything, that they will water that law down to where it's practically meaningless.
We as voters, 74% of us voted for this law to pass. We have this right. The law was given to us. I don't understand how an individual as Bill Schuette can come in and change a law, again, voted by the people.
So we voted for him, but for him to go against the will of the people is the opposite from what he was elected to do and what we had petitioned him to do. I mean, he literally stabbing us in the back.
Let's say a patient's caregiver, their crop fails, or the patient's crop fails. Where would that patient go if he's not able to go out and acquire it from another patient? Are we going to condemn sick people to getting off their sick bed and going into the street and looking for their medication? Because once you make the decision to become a medical marijuana patient, your life changes. Because in many cases, we quit consuming pain pills. We don't take OxyContin, we don't take hydrocodone. We use medical marijuana. So if our supply is interrupted, is our only alternative to go back on these harmful, addictive drugs? I don't think so, and I don't think that's what the voters intended. That's why the voters said that we have the ability to acquire and transfer.
If my local dispensary actually closed, I don't know what I would do because I would be in so much pain that I would want to commit suicide probably.
I've gone and bought my medical marijuana on the streets. It's more expensive. It doesn't have the same medicinal strength.
Well, there is a distinct effort. I mean, there is an opposition, and there are people who are trying to peel away at the rights that this act, affords us, and the protections that this act affords us. And these people just want to participate in this program, grow medicine, use medicine, whatever the circumstances may be within the the guidelines set forth by the law. And there are people that are trying to circumvent that and take away their liberty and their things as a result. And it shouldn't be like that. And it should be a little bit more defined, and they should feel a lot safer about this law that is so overwhelmingly supported by the voters.
Well, they say that the voters were tricked. They didn't know what they were voting for. Okay? They didn't believe or think that all of a sudden these like so-called dispensaries and compassion clubs and groups like this would be signing up. The Department of Community Health claims that they thought maybe there would be 5,000 people and that was it. And their theory is that unless you're terminally ill, okay, and you need to just sort of get high, before you die in order to feel better, that's the value of marijuana. So, you're obviously, if you're a cancer patient, you're dying, you're not a danger to society, so go ahead, buddy, go get high.
I am a smoker, and it upsets me when people call me a faker because it really does help, and it's not just to get high, it's actual medication.
What he's doing, he's got his own class of people that he's trying to help. He's not looking at the person such as myself or a person who doesn't have the mega bucks. See, this is something good for all qualities of life. Rich, poor, doesn't matter.
The biggest problem that Michigan medical marijuana patients is facing right now, is that the law has not been properly implemented. Different areas across the state, especially, you can see the discrepancy in the implementation because in some areas patients have access. Ann Arbor is a good example of that. In the western part of the state, it's a very hostile environment. Patients are scared. And I think that government itself, at the state level, the introduction of all these bills, at the core of these bills, paints a very negative picture of our law. Our law is a compassionate act. It was enacted by voters to help sick people. But if you read these acts that they're proposing right now, it paints a much different picture of the people that are benefiting from this medicine.
All of the honest, law-abiding citizens who are doing it peacefully and appropriately in their homes don't come into contact with law enforcement. So law enforcement thinks that because everybody who they see perhaps might be a criminal, or many of them, they assume that everyone involved in it is criminal, and that's not a fair assessment. So there's a big change in perception that needs to occur.
I think every law goes through a period of time where things get adjusted to make it more functional and to work within its intent and things like that. And it's not perfect by any means, but it is significantly clear in a lot of areas that a lot of people would like to have others believe are not so clear. And that's part of the effort of the opposition to hurt this law and stop us from functionally using it. These people are coming up with interpretations that make it impossible for the law to be carried out. And if that's the case, then that's got to be a bad interpretation.
They came in, there were former terminal cancer patients that were now cancer-free. People that have been told they have maybe 2 weeks left to live, maybe 2 days. They walked in to testify on his behalf with their medical records and their doctors, cancer-free. We have the cure for cancer sitting here if we can coax it out of this plant. Because of the numbers of people who are afflicted by cancer, we need to go after this now.
Okay, so I did that documentary with activists around the state of Michigan in 2010, 2011, and that was in the beginning of our fight to make the cannabis plant free. It's a plant, it's not a gun, So my belief is that everyone should have access to cannabis. with cannabis with THC involved in it. We passed the act through a voters initiative. I don't know if you have the ability to do voters initiatives here in Greece, but collecting signatures, talking to people in Parliament, letting them know that you want the laws to become more unrestrictive. The way I got into the business, before I did this, I was a chef by trade. I sold, a restaurant that I owned part of to, go into the medical marijuana industry. I started with $5,000. I'm not a wealthy person. I'm a poor working class young man from Detroit. After opening up the dispensary, we opened up a certification clinic that employed 2 doctors that helped patients get approved to the program. Not everyone was approved. If they didn't qualify, we did not help them get a license, and we would refund them their money. After that, I was approached by some young folks from the university. They wanted to do a publication. So we started the MMM Report magazine. That's how I started talking to people that also own dispensaries and patients. If you'll notice on the cover, a couple of the people that were in the documentary, were, featured in the magazine as well with patient testimonials. After that documentary happened, we really had to fight the state. There's some communities there's many politicians that did not want to implement the medical marijuana law and make it open and accessible. They wanted to go after people that were growing it for medical reasons. Now, not everybody followed the rules, of the program. Some people took advantage of it, but they didn't kill anybody. They didn't hurt anybody. They just were, trying to make some money. And in economies where, there's not as many jobs, this can be a great opportunity. Instead of it being sold, on the streets, supporting cartels and money leaving the community, all of a sudden, people could have a job. And these jobs would help, the local economy. In 2011, we initiated the first campaign to legalize after medical marijuana. It was issued by NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's mostly lawyers, that run those organizations. They failed. Then we went back to the drawing boards and we worked on legalizing individual cities. I helped with several of these around the state, financing them with the money that I was making from the medical marijuana dispensaries. Many people in the medical marijuana dispensary went to jail, because it was left up to each individual county to decide whether or not people were breaking the law or not breaking the law. It was subject to the interpretation of the prosecutor. I created a group called the Vote Green Initiative Vote Green Initiative Program to educate people in various communities about the advantages and the things that I was seeing with medical marijuana, and teaching them how to approach their local lawmakers and give testimonies to the effectiveness of the medical marijuana. When people see, kids that are suffering, and then all of a sudden they're using this medical marijuana and it's working, it changes their perspectives. Because sometimes people are living in some kind of state of cognitive dissonance where they choose to just live in this, old paradigm. Well, what did the state do then? They came up with some case laws to, try to take out the dispensaries, take us out. Fortunately, I lived in Flint, Michigan, and my dispensaries are in Flint, Michigan, which is economically depressed. There's a lot of black people. People are poor. They didn't care. They have real crime, people getting shot every day. So medical marijuana fed in pretty good there. I helped, draft some memorandums that other cities got from their local people, and we were able to keep about 5 or 6 cities open. Well, the rest of the state got raided and shut down. Campaigns fail, oftentimes, because, they're not structured properly. You can do polling. you can find out. I mean, I don't know what the polling is here in Greece, but I would imagine that if you said we're going to tax and regulate marijuana, full spectrum marijuana with THC, and we're going to use that money for education or for some other positive purpose, and you poll it that way, you're going to get a majority of support. I don't know what the support level is here, but we passed ordinances for these medical marijuana dispensaries in each city, and by passing these local rules, it allowed us to start becoming real businesses, normalized. Dispensaries in Detroit and Traverse City and some communities got corrupted. Big business wanted to move in. Everyone wants a piece of the action, and they all want the money. But in smaller communities like Flint, we were able to survive without having to deal with that. This presentation that I put together was, showing other people how to open up, as well as working on investors when I was in the investment stage of my dispensaries. So, I tell people you create a business plan, make contacts with your local authorities, apply for any applicable license, prepare a site plan, organize staff, prepare administrative paperwork to run your place. Making contact with your local authorities and talking to your local authorities about this issue in a serious way is how you move the needle. Apply for, permits whenever you're trying to do stuff. They might say no, but the application process can give you an opportunity to create dialogue. Create good site plans just like you would in any professional situation. Think about security. When you can use local law enforcement as security, that's a great way for them to, feel like they're part of the program. They're involved. They can, make sure that you're serious about the people that you staff and that you work with. Go through some kind of background checks to make sure that you're not trying to take advantage of a legalized or medical program. Just like with any other, every time you go to see the doctor in the United States, they make you sign some kind of piece of paper saying that, you're not going to sue them or, one thing or another. Come up with disclaimers that make patients, promise that they're not going to give their medicine or sell their medicine to someone who ain't supposed to have it. Caregivers, you guys right now are working on a state licensed program. I would really encourage your politicians to add language to the medical marijuana law to allow individual people to grow cannabis. All right? Commercial cannabis isn't always the best. It's a homeopathic medicine. Everyone should be able to grow it. Everyone should be able to help their family members out that need it. With our patients, we try to make sure that we give them instructions. So that we can say that we're not selling the marijuana, we're providing them a service by educating them. Make sure you pay any taxes. That's very, very important. When we find that we're at the stage now where we're state licensed and regulated, and if you didn't pay your taxes, they kicked you out of the ability to own one of these businesses. In the United States, we had this big gangster, his name was Al Capone. And he ran the liquor business, for many years during Prohibition. Well, Prohibition of alcohol didn't work. The Prohibition of marijuana doesn't work, but they could never get Al Capone because he was never there. They got him on taxes. So always pay your taxes. I hate paying taxes. But when you're trying to legitimize the new industry, being willing to cough up that money, that really helps. Make sure that you got good legal representation. Avoid people that try to pretend to be pot lawyers. They're like, you're specializing in something because maybe they're not very good at law in general. United States, we have weight limits. I don't know what you're going to have here. Edibles and concentrates. They try to take away edibles and concentrates from us at one point or another. Edibles and concentrates are the only things that can really put you in a position where you're not high functioning. If you don't use cannabis very often, then it might be very discombobulating, but you're not. It's not like going to be like when you're totally drunk. Edibles and concentrates is like when you're totally drunk. I mean, they can really make you seriously incapacitated. No one ever dies from extreme, from large potencies of, but some people, you know, they have to take a nap. They have to take a nap sometimes. You know, you can make these various products from extracts. There's some extract people up here that are talking about CO2 extraction, alcohol extractions, or you can just cook with the herb. You know, how many people here have cooked with cannabis? No? All right, we got some honest people here. It's fun, it's good, and it's the healthiest way. We always try to encourage our patients to get away from the smokables and go to the edibles. Topicals, CBDs. We all know about CBDs. There's a lot of CBDs going on at the conference here. Raw cannabis juice. When it's not heated, it's not psychoactive. It doesn't get you high. It has THC in it. It's THCA, you know, which won't get you high, just like CBD won't get you high. But we find some of the most magnificent responses from raw cannabis juice. You know, over at the booth over at the Lesbos Plant Library, I've got an empty container of canna blends that we make, and I have a very high, I have a significant portion of my clientele at the 2 retail locations that just come for this raw cannabis juice, and most of them are over the age of 50 and 60, and they swear by it. I don't have a clinical study, but, you know, and this is free knowledge, folks. There's no patent. You just take the leaves and you put it in the juicer and you juice it up and you drink it like any kind of, you know, fruit. It's a vascular dilator. It's an anti-inflammatory, and I find it 10 times more effective than just CBD or CBGs by themselves, taking the whole raw plant and juicing it. All right, so medical marijuana patients. A lot of people that use marijuana, if they use it every day, they're using it for medical reasons for one reason or another, whether it's physical or psychoactive or whatnot. And just like, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, people at the hospital, you have to have good bedside manner. You know, you got to be patient with people. You try to document everything. You know, without having, you know, clinical research, we had to work on so much anecdotal evidence. So we take patients, they'd have access to 50 or so strains. You make a log, write down what works good for you, what doesn't work good for you. Right now in our database, you know, we've treated about 15,000 patients over the last 8 years. All right, good ways to connect is with social media, you know, online listings like Craigslist, going to events like this. I would like to see more medical people here and involved. These are some of the case laws that have to do with the United States and what we had to do to survive. So I put this documentary together, you know, in 2016, 2017, you know, we had some legalization efforts that failed, mostly because they weren't properly funded, you know, or, you know, in some other states, you know, there's people that try to set up monopolies. In Michigan, it was the Michigan Responsibility Council, you know, where there was you know, some kind of government corporation monopoly. People rejected that, you know, so it did not work. You know, we have legislation that comes out of our legislators, you know, like your parliament, you know, and some of them are not good. You know, we had to take an active role in helping the politicians come up with good rules. And we, you know, had functions and made, you know, served them pizza. And, you know, just like any other group that wants to get something done from their government. Marijuana people can do it too. I don't know if you have the ability to do local ordinances, but, you know, it would be good if you could. When I was fighting the battle in some communities that did not want to have access, you know, law enforcement would arrest people that were involved in medical marijuana, but then we would go in and we would talk to the police about what they had done and why, and they would tell us, you know, the truth, and that's that, you know, they were telling everyone that all dispensaries were illegal, but then, when we talk to them directly, so when we're developing these businesses, we do it like anything else. We do marketing. Print was great. Radio and television, they censored us, because of the federal rules. Online is obviously where most marketing is going nowadays, but social media is starting to really put a hamper down on cannabis, saying that it's in violation. So you got to get creative and always look for new social media opportunities. Google will let you advertise, but you got to be creative. In the United States, we have a directory listing that's called Weed Maps. It's an app that people download on their phone, and they can find out where to find cannabis all over the United States. I don't know if you have anything like that here in Europe, but you should. Whoever comes up with that idea is going to make a lot of money. And then, of course, like my magazine, I provide marketing opportunities for people, around our state and other states around the country. It's very similar. All right, so these are a couple of my locations. The top two are the two dispensaries that I have. And then, the one in the middle is our doctor's office, where patients get certified. And then we have this administrative building on the side. It used to be an old bingo hall. And we print the magazine out of there and, have some functions. We did a function with Jerry helped us put together with one of our local politicians, Sheldon Neeley. And he's working on expunging, removing penalties for people that had previously been convicted of marijuana crimes now that it's legal. Oh, So, as I started off with $5,000, and I was able to lease a space for inexpensive. I was growing some cannabis because I had my medical marijuana card, and I noticed that there wasn't very many stores. There was a positive rule in Flint, so I asked the mayor, can I open up? And they didn't say no. I gave them a memo saying this is what I wanted to do, and I got no response. So I opened up the first one, and they never harassed me. Getting some kind of local approval or some kind of local buy-in is very important for us there. But because I started with very little money, I worked over 8 years, we saved up a lot of money, but I had to spend a lot of it. I spent a lot of it on continuing to push the laws forward. I gave myself a humble salary. I paid all my taxes. I did it completely transparent, And, we have a phrase in the United States, don't mess with someone that buys ink by the barrel. I thought that magazine, even though it put me at some liability by being front and center, and it also protected me because they knew that I had the ability to influence people. And we did big protests when they would become things problematically. This is what I had to acquire for investment in order to meet the capitalization needs of the state of Michigan. $300,000 for each dispensary, $150,000 for the processor. Right now we have our capitalization, and we're finalizing our license. Now that we have full legalization, Michigan's going to take about a year before we're able to transition from medical sales to recreational sales. Everyone in Michigan can grow. And that's so great because then you have these grow stores. You got a handful of grow stores here in Athens, like 5, I think. But, all of a sudden, people want to have a small little grow for themselves and produce their own medicine that they know is healthy and safe. And I think that Athens, every balcony here could, have a couple. It would be good. It would be very good. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. I want to, if anyone has any questions for me, I'd like to answer.
Hey Ben, my name is Gregory Fry. I work with a US-based cannabis education company called Green Flower. I don't know if you've heard of us.
Yeah, I've heard of you.
And I had 2 questions for you. Can I ask 2? Will you do that? The first question I wanted to ask you was the challenges from your experience around cannabis education and training that needs to happen after legalization.
Okay, so you know what is interesting? You know, when I started in the beginning, you know, there was one place, you know, in California that was a couple places in California that were a little bit ahead of the curveball, and they were working on doing some standardized training. You know, when I come from the restaurant business, so, you know, having good manuals for staff and, you know, educating your staff about how to handle a product that people are consuming is very important. But the playbook was always changing. The rules were always changing. And in the United States, you know, every state has different rules, and even individual communities have different rules. So, you know, I think, you know, you're going to have specialized local stuff, and then you're going to have some universal stuff. And, you know, I know that you're working on some good stuff online, and I'm waiting until, you know, some more of the laws have solidified, you know, before investing into any kind of specific education program for our staff. But I think it's very important for medical marijuana that people really understand how to use it as a medicine, and some of it's trial and error, and you know, based off of anecdotal stuff. So I try not to pretend as being a definitive expert on any of that stuff. I try to tell my staff not to pretend like they're a definitive expert on that stuff. But the more knowledgeable your staff is, the better the experience is going to be for the patient, and the more efficient they're going to be able to treat their ailments. When it comes to legalization, you know, it's really not that complicated. You know, the more your staff knows about the products, the better salespeople they are, which is great. You know, but the other point, you know, I try to be I want to train my staff in such a way where they're going to be, you know, for recreational, they're going to be humble, and they're going to be, you know, just the standard stuff that you would have in any hospitality kind of situation. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And for your next one?
The other thing I wanted to ask your thoughts on is how the cannabis issue is, I think a lot of people are realizing it's much greater than a lot of other single issues out there. And I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on some of the different social benefits that we see once society starts to embrace this plant and learn how to get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, I was born in Pennsylvania, but I grew up in Detroit. And we operate these businesses in Flint, Michigan. And Flint, Michigan is very poor. It was a manufacturing community, big car producing place, the same in Detroit. And a lot of those manufacturing jobs went away. And many people left. So we have many houses and many buildings that are abandoned and not in use. So, you know, by allowing small businesses, you know, and individual people to grow, you know, it brings up the real estate values. People move in, you know, from other communities, and you know, the city starts to come back to life. So if we can, you know, structure these rules where, you know, there's maximum positivity, and, you know, for small mom and pop operations, then that's what I think can do the best. Regardless of where it goes, if you're manufacturing these products locally instead of importing hash from, you know, or from, you know, Morocco or, you know, Spain or wherever it's coming from, you know, and you're producing it here, the dollar stays here. You know, United States, Mexico produced, you know, most of our marijuana, you know, and the Mexicans were also selling the heroin, you know, and you know, other bad stuff. So you take away some of their funding. That's another big positive social. The other aspect is that, you know, sometimes, you know, I don't know how it is here, but in the United States, you know, people would use marijuana as a catalyst to take advantage of certain classes of people and certain ethnicities. So when we remove the stigma about marijuana and cannabis, then we're, you know, making, you know, a more socially just society.
First of all, thank you for the great presentation. I wanted to ask you, since you went through a lot of trouble in 2011, what's your key advice for us that now THC is not allowed in Greece and self-cultivation is not allowed, even if it's CBD-only plants? So what's your advice? Should we move on with online petitions, getting members of parliament involved? What's the number one? Where should we start?
Well, I was talking to Jerry about this morning. Medical marijuana is very important, and the ability to grow some cannabis is very important. So the most important thing is just do it. You know, don't be afraid. You know, if you're doing it for the right reason and you're helping people, you know, you can change minds. Some people lose. I saw friends of mine go to jail for, you know, a few days or a month or maybe a year. And it brought sadness to me, you know, to watch them struggle. But if some people don't do it, and, you know, if you can help someone, say you grow 6 plants illegally, and you turn that into a medicine, and you find out somebody that really needs it, and you make their life better, you know, then you have some kind of evidence. You can bring these children in and have a private meeting with your public officials intimately, and just say, hey, this has helped my child or my neighbor's child. You should reconsider these rules. Have smoke-ins. You know, that's what we did in the United States, where we all get together randomly in public and smoke in public and then go home and don't cause any problems. You know, talk about it to your friends. You know, those are the things that I would do for advice for here. You know, only people from Greece know, really know. I'm not going to know. But those are things that I think you should try and do as much of as you can. You know, and if you have to go to jail for a week or a month, you know, do it with pride.
Thank you.
Thank you. Erfresto?